this speaker, Scott Humphries, first at a Business First panel. He was up with 3 other business owners, and just in their responses, you could tell there was something different about him, and it's really his expertise in the kinds of missions that he runs. So he's a business owner like the other people on the panel. It's just such a different business. So we thought it'd be great to have you hear from him today. I don't know how many people have read the newsletter. His bio is short, so I want to make sure that you didn't miss any of it. He's an entrepreneur and a seasoned leader with a diverse background of military service, business startup, and Fortune Top 50 experience. He and his partners founded Mission Essential in Columbus in 2005. That's what he's going to speak about today. They deliver operational solutions for high-consequence missions for the U.S. government worldwide, and they were awarded the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award for emerging businesses in 2006. In addition to that, he joined the Army as a private at 17. Army paid for his undergraduate education at University of Massachusetts, where he received his commission as a second lieutenant. He became an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter pilot and retired as lieutenant colonel after 23 years of service. He was a purchasing manager at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, and he has just earned his MBA at Fisher College of Business in 2015. He lives in Upper Arlington with his wife, Kirsten, and his son, Will, and his daughter, Katie. Please help me welcome Scott Humphries.
Has anybody heard of Mission Essential or Mission Essential personnel prior to this gathering? If you had, just raise your hand real quick. Yeah, it's not many. We started 10 years ago in Columbus, 3 of us in my partner's basement, Chad Mon, literally in Clintonville. And then grew from 0 revenue to $760 million in revenue in 7 years. That is an amazing amount of growth. It is a scary amount of growth, and something I don't think we could replicate. It was just one of those things that came together. And what makes it so unlikely is, what are the odds that 3 guys in the Army get together and start a company at the right time in the right place and are able to capitalize on this, and actually, with no experience in the space other than the end user, meaning I was an Apache pilot, my 2 partners were Special Forces guys. We had never built a business, and we certainly had never done business with the government except to get a paycheck from them in combat zones. How do you go build a business when you don't know the business of the business, except the pointy end of it? So a very unlikely type of thing. Since we started, 20,000 deployments in 38 countries. We've sent 20,000 people to 38 different countries. That's a lot of folks. And it's been enjoyable. We've been all over the place. It's been great. Still privately held, and we recently, about 2 years ago, moved our headquarters from Easton over to New Albany. So what do we do really? There was this really cool operational solutions thing I threw in there, but we started off doing language services. So my 2 partners spoke Arabic, which is pretty handy at this time. I speak German, not really handy anymore, right? Worked great when I was stationed there, but not really a critical skill anymore, except at the Opera House. So we started out realizing there was a huge need for language services overseas. The government needed interpreter translators, folks to work with people on the ground, culture attachés, translate, get the nuances, gather intelligence and whatnot. And there was a huge requirement for it. So we went after that business literally by just taking leave, taking days off from work, going to DC, and pounding the pavement, meeting all the large contractors, speaking to people that had contracts already, and then having them laugh us out the door, and then we just go try the next one. Because we were very sure we could do the work, somebody just had to believe us. We knew how to get there, get on the ground, and make it happen, but we just had to get somebody to take a chance on us. So there we go. So in 2005, there was 3 of us and 2 recruiters. We hired 2 of our friends, and that's what you do when you're starting a business because nobody else is foolish enough to come work for you. You hire 2 friends, you pay them nothing, and you start trying to figure out how you're going to get this done. So we were able to actually get a small contract to get 3 guys on another contract to go to Iraq. And that was really the start. Another company called us. We met in DC and said, hey, we need 3 guys. Do you have them? We said, sure. We didn't. We got them deployed, and that got us enough money to then get out of Chad's basement, literally. And we had an office at Regis down in Easton. So there was 3 of us and two recruiters. Then we went into L3 Communications, which is a massive multinational in New York City. Their holding company must have 300 defense contracting companies, but they had the multi-billion-dollar contract for all the work for the military and the government overseas for language. We finally got into them after being laughed out. I very much remember sitting with these guys in a meeting. It was me and Chad Monin, and we were sitting there. We met this guy's vice president, and he's looking at these two clowns from Columbus, and he starts asking us, how many contracts have you had? We're like, none. And so, he's just going through all these requirements, and he said, so who's your contract expert? And without missing a beat, Chad says, Scott is. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So this guy says, so you're a contract expert? I said, no, not at all. But what I can tell you is that I'll figure it out. We will get it done. We'll meet the contract's requirements, and we will get it done. And so we were shuffled out and bid farewell. But funny enough, a couple weeks later, we've been sending out letters to people. We would go on the internet and find out who's in charge of small business. We would send letters to them directly, just introducing ourselves. And out of the blue, there happened to be a guy born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, sitting at a desk, Vice President Mark Peltier in charge of language, who the only reason he opened our letters because it said it was from Columbus, Ohio. And he gave us a call. And that was that. We picked up a contract with L3 to provide linguists for Iraq. And within 6 months, we were their #1 provider for small businesses of their people. And we went from, I think, in a year with them, from $1 million to $20 million to then $40 million a year with those guys. That fast. And we spun up and spun up and spun up. And it was a really amazing learning process because I didn't know how to invoice the government. I remember we had to set up a deployment station and bring all these guys in and get them prepped and get them ready to go overseas, which I'd done a million times in the Army. We built a company just like an Army unit. Works great, lasts a long time. I know how to build a unit, how to break down everything and get it going. But when it came time to invoice the government, I had all these receipts laid out on the floor from hotel bills and this, that, and the other. And I had a Microsoft template up or something, and I sent it in, and they laughed, and they sent it back. And we had to pay our people, right? You got to pay your people, but no money was coming in. So it became kind of a weekly call to the wives saying, hey, we're getting ready to empty out the checking accounts again, and savings that we're fairly confident we'll get this back someday. So we didn't know what we didn't know, but we figured it out and got through it. So working with L3 over the years, Afghanistan was a part of the business they really didn't do much with. The requirements weren't as big, and they kind of ignored it. And it was coming up for a rebid, all the work in Afghanistan, and the government wanted somebody new in there, and they made it a small business set-aside. Now, this contract was for $716 million of work. How in the world is that a small business set-aside, right? I mean, it was clearly done to get rid of these guys, no problem. So we went after it. The problem is, when you win, you got to do it. So we won, and then we had to figure out how to go from a company of about 50 people, give or take, to a company of several thousand people. So 2009 was a very interesting year. Kind of a pain in the car while driving it type of thing, where you're growing so fast you can barely hang on. But we won that contract and took over the Afghanistan theater, and we still provide all linguists in theater there. So we're spread across the entire country. I think at the peak of the war, we probably had 5,000 people in theater, which is a lot of folks to manage. So we had all of our people, we have all of our interpreter translators and all of our management staff, security personnel, everything. We are a one-stop shop. They all work for us, and we manage pay and benefits across the country. So pretty big stuff. And grew and grew and grew. 2012 was the height of the war, if you guys recall, and then it started to wind down. But that was our biggest year, was $760 million in revenue, which is great, but it's sustainable. So war starts tapering down. What happens? Well, the contract starts to get smaller. As requirements start to go down, and then all the big guys are fishing in the same pond for the same work. So we had to go through, over the last 4 years, kind of a reconfiguring period of what do they need, how are we going to get there, how are we going to diversify our business, and remain relevant as this landscape changes. And so that's what we spent the last 4 years doing, was reconfiguring ourselves to get more into intelligence work, diversify more of our training opportunities, and help with nation-building operations with USAID, State Department, some other folks. So that's what we do now. We've done intelligence for a while. We work with all the agencies, FBI, CIA, DIA, NSA, some of the other nice folks out in Northern Virginia. We do a lot of real-time analysis stuff where someone kicks a door in Kabul and grabs some stuff. within an hour, it's in our hands, and our guys are going through it, seeing what's going on, analyzing it, and sending it back to theater for action. Really, really exciting stuff. So that's kind of where we've been in the last 10 years and where we hope to continue going. So a couple things that we came across, and I said didn't see that coming. I talked about the invoicing. The other interesting thing is before we had a contract very early on with the State Department to put 40 linguists in the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, and it takes some money to do that. So have you ever sat down with a Midwest banker and try to convince them they need to give you $1 million line of credit so you can send people to Iraq? I'll tell you, it's not an easy sell. First of all, they don't believe us. And secondly, we're like, no, seriously, we can do this, and we have a contract, or we're going to get a contract, and if we get it, we need it. But that was a really interesting exercise in just seeing how convincing we could be to people if we could sell them on what we were really doing. Then the other interesting story was none of us were finance guys, right? I've been an operations guy my entire life. And we weren't necessarily sure once we got that loan how we were going to stay within covenants. And so if we would do something and we weren't sure if we broke a covenant, I would call my banker and say, hey, I'm not really sure. I think we did something here. Can you come take a look? And he was amazed because he said, how come you're not trying to hide this from me? What do you mean? I mean, you're the banker. I need you to fix some bank stuff here. I'm the pilot. If you want to fly an Apache, call me. I'll tell you to fly an Apache. But you're the banker. And what was amazing is he said, well, most of our clients hide stuff from us as long as they can, hoping we won't find out. And which was kind of very contrary to kind of how we operated. And I said, look, man, that's, I need you. You're a partner in this deal with us. And if I can't be honest with you, how can I expect you to trust us going forward when I need you again? So it ended up being our bankers that nominated us for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, which was a really fantastic experience for us. So that was a great learning experience about trusting your bankers and telling the truth, which, as I found in government contracting, is actually a novel idea of telling the truth, because most of these companies out there will just say what it takes to get to work, and then figure out later on how they're going to gouge more money out of the government. And there's legal ways to do it. So it's very interesting. One of the Christmas parties we had to deal with, so we enjoyed some success, and we were waiting for the Afghanistan bid to come in that we put in there, and we were also waiting for the Iraq bid to come in that we were a subcontractor to. So we had this big Christmas party in our Easton office, and we'd all had dinner and drinks, and we're back at the office, and people are playing Madden on our flat screens, and it's a big old party, and then a fax comes through, and initial one is we had lost Afghanistan. Big bummer. All right, no worry, L3's got Iraq in the bag. An hour later, fax comes through, boom, Iraq lost by L3. So we went from being here, certainly to grow a double, triple, to we have no work. During our Christmas party, and it's like 9 o'clock at night, and it was a bummer. So what do you do, right? What do you do? So my partners and I and our senior managers, we all kind of gathered in Chad's office, and the first thing we did was bust open a very expensive bottle of tequila that we had gotten out on the border of Mexico six months earlier, and took care of that. And then we started planning. We didn't say a word to anybody out in the rest of the party in our office was having fun, but we said, okay, let's meet here tomorrow at 9 o'clock, and we're going to have two plans, two courses of action. What's the wind down plan look like? And what's the plan to fix this, to beat this, to get this business back? And we're going to pursue both parallel paths here, but we're going to fix this. But okay, we got a plan for what if we have to wind down. And that was really a very interesting experience for us, because it's easy to feel sorry for yourself or just to kind of let go in those points and really let that despondence take over. But what really came through for us was all of our leadership training in the military. Look, we can get through this. We can solve it. We just got to decide that's what we're going to do and go do it. And so that's what we did. We started structuring things to head out, get more business. All of us got on a plane, went out to D.C. By this time, we had apartments out there. We stayed out there for probably 3 weeks straight and kept working. The Afghanistan contract we originally had not won was won by a company that was not actually a small business. And they were using a shell company as their front. So we sent some friends of ours to go investigate this and gathered a bunch of intelligence and photos and documents and went into their home offices and applied for jobs and everything. And we presented the SBA this very nice intelligence dossier of everything to do with this company. And then the SBA said, wow, it turns out these guys aren't a small business. So they were disqualified, and lo and behold, here we are. So we did, in fact, win that one. And then we, L3 did not retain any Iraqi work, but the folks that did pick it up came to us and had us fill some vacancies for them. So really interesting time trying to get through that mental part of a major setback, and then what do you do with it? But in the end, good fun and good learnings. So I figure everybody likes pictures, and I don't want to bore you with lecturing here. So one of the interesting things we did early on is, when you start a business, half the time you'll be everything to anybody, anything to anybody, right? Well, can you do this? Sure, I'll do that. Absolutely, we do that stuff. So the L3 guys called us and said, hey, do you guys do security? To which I said, sure, we do security. And they'd had this place called the Golden Dome Complex, and it's right on Route Irish coming out of Baghdad, where the local national payroll, they paid all the local nationals in cash, right? All the local national Iraqis working on base and what have you. And cash kept on getting stolen, not surprisingly. So they said, look, we need you guys to come in and secure this cash for us. Can you take care of it? We said, absolutely. So here we were in a new business line immediately. So I had to call. We had made a connection with this woman, and I'm not even making this name up because you can't forget it, Rebecca Rabakawaka. And she is a Fijian. And I forgot how we met her, but she had a relationship with Fijian nationals coming off their required service from the military in Fiji. So we started calling these guys, and these are a bunch of Fijian guys. These are our guys, about half of our team, because the rest of them were on their posts. This is us in Iraq. We started calling these guys and getting together a security team, because they're all big dudes and really happy guys. And then I had to order all their uniforms, so I called a friend of mine who owns a uniform company, and everything was XL, double XL, size 15 boots. I mean, these guys are gargantuan. And all their body armor and stuff, and then we sent them over there. And you can see the guy on the right, it's like, hey. But then we had to find weapons for them. And Iraq in '06 was like the Wild West. I mean, it was do what you want day every day, especially for contractors, because the military could barely keep up with themselves. As a contractor, man, you're floating. You're out there and you're doing what you want to do. So Chad went over and linked up with some Special Forces guys and made a donation to their team fund. And next thing you know, we had 50 AK-47s and about 6,000 rounds of ammo. And next thing you know, our guys are all armed. It was all great. So we would go over and hang out with these guys. And what was really great with the Fijians is on Fridays, they would have this big barbecue. And this complex was pretty cool. It's a really neat, very ancient building. But they would have this big barbecue, and they'd have their uniform tops on and their body armor and their AKs, but then they would put on traditional dress like this husk-type skirt. And they would do all these traditional dances and just have a great time in a combat zone, a lot of fun. But just a really great experience. And a lot of fun putting it together, but you can imagine the logistics to get, from Columbus to Fiji to Iraq and get that to all work, but it did. We eventually got out of security business because as things got more and more stable down the road, and there were some problems with folks like Blackwater, it became more of a standard type of uniform guys from your run-of-the-mill type security companies over there just kind of pulling duty. But I am proud to say we didn't lose a dollar. We didn't lose any of our guards, which was good, and it was good fun for all. So that was one of the new business lines. Another thing that was kind of fun is, when you go someplace new for business, you can go out and see what the sites are. You go to St. Louis, you go to the Arch or whatever. So you guys ever recognize those cross swords there above me? That's Saddam's parade ground. You must have saw on the news a million times. So we were out and about, and in the background there, where's this laser? Is that it? So you can see that right back there at Suburban. That was our only vehicle. It was an up-armored Suburban, so it was an armored vehicle, but it was Suburban. And what's weird is we've been in a lot of combat zones with the military. You got all your people, all your gear. You got a radio, right? You get in trouble, you call someone. You roll out the gate with you and two buddies. That's all you got. There is no radio call for an Apache to come in and help you out. There is nothing. So very, very bizarre. But so we go out, we're driving around checking on our people, and Ricky, the guy on the right, one of our security guys, right there, takes us to Saddam's parade ground. Really, really very impressive, sadly impressive place. Those hands that hold the sword, they're all these big bronze plates. And it's all put around a skeleton framework, much like the Statue of Liberty would be. And these guys come up right there in that top right picture, and they're in uniforms, and who knows what it means. I mean, who's got authority over there except for us, right? So you have no idea what these guys are doing. And they offered to give us a tour. We're like, sure, man, whatever. So there's actually spider holes to get into the base of those swords and you can climb all the way up into that fist and stick your head out by the hilt of the sword. So we're climbed all through these things, and it's really, really neat. So we're up there doing this, and at the very end, you can see I'm sitting there at the base. See that base there? I'm sitting there. All those helmets, those are helmets. I know you can't see them very well. They come down in this massive metal net, and all those helmets are from the Iran-Iraq War. And those are all Iranian soldiers' helmets that they had killed in combat that they put on this very nice memorial tribute to their war. And the shorter guy, the two up there, asked me if I wanted to take one home as a souvenir, which I said, yeah, I'm not feeling like going to jail on the way out of theater here if I can avoid that for taking state treasures. But it was a really interesting day. It was fun, and it took a little bit of trust on our part to go down a spider hole and go into these bronze hand statues of these guys. But it certainly did pass some time while we were there. So that was a good way to get out there and see things. A lot of you folks have to recruit people. You've had job fairs you got to go to or whatever. So one of the things we would do when we go over there is we'd have to find local nationals, Iraqi nationals, to work for us. And the only way you do that is you leave the green zone. You go outside the safety area, and you go talk to local nationals. So we'd kit up, take our nice little Nissan bus out there, and leave the green zone. So that's myself and my friend Josh Evilsizer heading out Checkpoint Bravo on Route Irish to go talk to locals. A little unnerving, because again, once you're out there, I don't think that Nissan bus was going to do a whole lot for us if things broke bad. And things occasionally got sporty, but by and large, it was all pretty good. But not your average job fair at the Hyatt, I will say. You had to work through some unique challenges to get your job done around here. I think that might be the last photo. Yes, it is. So, just a really interesting experience overall on putting these things together. And then the last story I'll hit with, and I'll give you guys a couple minutes, is everybody familiar with the movie Captain Phillips? Heard about that, the Maersk, Alabama? One of the really cool things we had, we sadly, one of the very tragic parts of our business is we lose people, right? And by lose, I mean I don't know where they are. I mean they get killed. And we've had over 200 people killed in the 10 years that we've been doing this. Because wherever a soldier is, our TERP is standing right next to him. So if an IED goes off on a SEAL team that's going through, our guy gets hit right along with him. So we have lost a lot of people, and it's been a very sobering thing to deal with, because we would go make calls to their families in person. One of the owners would always go and go make the announcement and provide all the details and the death benefits. And we'd come up with our own Purple Heart and a Medal for Valor for our people, because they were getting no recognition. And we felt it was really important that they're right next to the soldiers out there doing it. And we felt it was important they get recognized as well. And so we had done that. So that's kind of the bummer side of it. But on the Maersk, Alabama, it just so happened that one of our interpreters, we were working out of Djibouti in Horn of Africa, happened to be on the Navy ship that went out and did the intercept with the pirates. And so in the movie, when you see the SEAL team guys negotiating with the pirates out of the back of that lifeboat, that interpreter is our guy. He's our guy, right? And so he did all the negotiations, and we were down at the Greenbrier actually having an offsite meeting with our management staff when all this is coming back. And thing breaks bad, everything gets done, and we find out it's our guy. And after it's all done, he goes on leave to Egypt, and we called him in Egypt to let him, just to thank him for his service, and he couldn't believe we took the time to call him to thank him for just doing his job. And we were all astounded. We said, do you have any idea what you were just involved with, the history making that just went on, that you brokered as part of our company, and how proud of you we are? And I guess he just was blown away, because in their culture, they just don't take time to recognize such great achievement. And he was just so humble about the whole thing. It blew us away. And we've never forgotten just how humble he was about being there when it counted and getting the job done. But that was really great. Are there any questions so I can stop blathering? Sir?
How did you get the name Backscatter, and what does it mean?
So Backscatter is a company I started last year. What I'm really good at is planning and operations and solving problems. It's what I do. It's just everybody's got their skill set. It's what I do. And backscatter is a term I learned when I was an Apache pilot. When you squirt a laser at something, a target, if there is an obscurant in the way, If there's snow or rain or mist or something or dust storm kicking up, it can deflect laser particles in different directions, and it makes that laser less effective, which means my shot, my Hellfire shot, or 30 millimeter cannon shot or whatever could be off target. So it's something that backscatter is something that takes a concentrated energy and makes it less effective. On the backside of that, when you walk into the airport and you put your hands up in that booth and they swing that thing around you to scan your body, they're actually using backscatter, essentially like ping pong balls in a phone booth, to bounce off your body to define where you are in that space. So they're defining the problem. And so I thought of that as a really cool way to approach business coaching and problem solving, in that you're taking something that can be a gross inefficiency and yet you're turning it into something that's a very useful tool. So Backscatter is my business coaching company that I started to help people take that next step in their businesses. Because if I had someone telling us or helping us when we were growing through the stuff we didn't know, it sure would have been nice. I mean, I could talk for days, and I don't want to, about the mistakes we made and how much it cost. But having somebody that's been there before that can help you see what you can't see yourself yet, because we've been there, we've made those mistakes, we've fixed them, and we have the experience, is something I really enjoy doing. I like to teach. I guest lecture at Ohio State. I've taught at Otterbein. I really enjoy helping people make that next step and have them hopefully not step on the landmines that I have. So that's where Backscatter came from, and that's what I've been working on lately. Sir?
How did you find 5,000 trusted people with the language skills for Afghanistan?
Not easy, is it? So here's the deal. There's different levels of qualification needed, right? So some of these people had to have top secret clearances, and some had to have just a background check. So folks that needed a top secret SCI, which is all these kind of letters at the end that make them super top secret guys, we had to recruit U.S. citizens, so foreign-born, now U.S. citizens, and have to put them through the entire process of getting their clearance. And it's a long process, and it's very hard to get done. The folks that are just need a background check type of folks, those are mostly folks working in laundry or working, I don't know where they're working, laundry's not it, but working with people, low-level stuff on bases or what have you, that we would hire local nationals. You see us going out there doing our little recruiting bin, and do a background check to the extent we could. I mean, you can imagine that the record-keeping system in Iraq and Afghanistan are not that good. So most of it entailed a lot of counterintelligence screening by agents. So we'd sit these guys down and run through a lot of counterintel briefs and interviews and really try to weed them out. A few got through, we found them, but not easy. And especially when you start getting in Afghanistan, where you've got Pashto, Kurdish, a bunch of different tribal languages that are 1 2-offs. There's only about 5,000 in the U.S. that we could pick from that would fit anywhere in there. And then you start taking out the folks that are too old, too young, don't have the ability to get a clearance. It stops your pool of applicants gets very small very quickly. So you got to go out and fight for them. But we knew where they were, because when the State Department's helped settle people here, you know where they go. Just like all the Arabic speakers that live up in Dearborn, we know where the concentrations were. We sent out people to set up in their community, work with the imams and the elders, and work with them and develop a good relationship. And again, what made us unique over some of the other companies is when we said we were going to do it, we did it, which apparently is a really unique Midwest attribute. Anything else? In the back there, way back.
You're handling a lot of stuff that I think a lot of lay people would just assume that it would be the government's role and not outsourcing to a third party.
Right.
I'm interested about what are some of the advantages of that? Why is that happening? And are there any disadvantages?
Well, so I haven't talked about training, but we train all the services. So, for example, we used to teach the Marine Corps IED defeat, so improvised explosive device defeat training in 29 Palms. Why use us? Well, if you've got senior non-commissioned officers, senior sergeants and officers and folks that have a lot of experience, you want them forward in the field with your soldiers, leading them and taking care of them. You don't want them back in the schoolhouse. So if you can hire us and have our folks that have the experience but are no longer in the military stay at the schoolhouse and impart that knowledge, you can keep your experienced leaders forward where they need to be. So that's one example. The other thing is when you've got a skill set that's not going to be needed 10, 15 years down the road as much, the Army doesn't need to go out and recruit 5,000 Pashto speakers or Farsi or Dari, right? And they can't, by the way. You can't train people that fast. So by contracting with us, they come on. When they're done, they're off the books. The Army doesn't have to, the military doesn't owe them a retirement, doesn't do anything. We pay them all their benefits just like a W-2 employee. Everything's normal. When they're done, and the government then no longer has an obligation. So it is actually more cost effective in the end. Yes, sir, all the way in the back.
What is the pay range for a former U.S. military contractor working on the front lines
Doing what? I mean, they do everything. You can work on trucks, you can work on satellites.
Providing security, you know, moving, that kind of thing.
Like like a Blackwater security guy. You know, it used to be pretty high. It used to be, 100 grand, 150 grand. I'll tell you that our top level interpreters that are working on Intel contracts, I think the last pay for those guys was about $230,000 a year. But there's not many of them. I mean, it's all based on scarcity, right? Is it an abundant resource? There's a lot of guys that can pull a trigger. I can pull a trigger. I'm good at it, right? So I'm not going to get as much as a guy who's got a top secret clearance and speaks Farsi and understands tribal languages. So it's really across the gamut. There's mechanics over there. There's electricians. There's everything. Yes, sir.
You mentioned 760 million and having thousands of employees. How did you maintain your small business capacity?
We didn't. We just had to win it as a small business. We'd have to stay a small business, thankfully, because we couldn't have. One of the best moves we made early on, when we didn't have money, which was most of the time, we invested in an operating system or a financial system called Deltek. Anybody heard of Deltek? And it is a government DCAA compliant system for invoicing and this and that. And one of the things we realized was that if we were going to be competitive down the road, we were going to have a compliance system that would make us competitive. They allowed them to come in and audit us and this and that. So we spent about $200,000 implementing that when we didn't have 20 bucks between us. And it turned out to be a great investment. So that's, implementing Deltek, bringing consultants in and paying people that have the experience, like I talked about earlier, like why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is paying people that know what's going on is really what it takes sometimes to get to be a player down the road. Because if we hadn't implemented that system, there's no way we could have survived. And we wouldn't have gotten the contract to begin with. Sir?
You mentioned that you did some nation building.
Yes.
Because it seems to me that more and more armed forces do nation building along with all the other, security and fighting that they do. Tell us a little bit about what your experiences in that and what you see as being the future role of the Army, the armed forces in these kinds of insurgents.
Yeah, well, I mean, the nation building piece, that's always one of those weird ones, right? So we were helping with rule of law stuff in Iraq where when a country loses its infrastructure, its governmental infrastructure, and the number one thing you've got to get stood up again is rule of law. I'm about to get cut off here. Is rule of law, right? How do you then establish society again? And so we were working with the State Department and other folks to help vet all the judges that were in theater and country, separate the good from the bad, start working with, okay, how are we going to stand up a police force that can be effective and not corrupt? And how do you weed these people out? Because I think one of the big mistakes we made when we took over in Iraq is we took all the Iraqi generals out of power, regardless who they were. Well, some of those folks weren't bad guys, and they were actually really good folks that could have helped rebuild the country quicker. And that's neither here nor there now, but we made a mistake. We gutted them, and that really collapsed the infrastructure. The role of the military going forward, I don't think the military, it's not our job to do nation building. It's our job to support it, in my mind. And I'm not going to be on Fox News talking about this later, but that's a State Department deal and USAID and other things, but it's our job to support it and secure it. And I just don't think we do enough strategic thinking about this and actually go and implement it before we decide to make an entrance into a theater and upset the apple cart a little bit. So I think we need to be there to support it, but we can't execute it. It's not what we do. We pull triggers.
Okay, last question.
Sir.
Continuing on with this discussion more than the entrepreneurial discussion, what do you think the chances are of doing something constructive in the Middle East that will be satisfactory for the relationships between the West and the East with advisors? Or will there be more than advisors working with natives who are in the area?
Are you talking about combat operations or just in general trying to keep?
More general, but to solve the conflict that seems not to be solvable.
If I could answer that, right? I mean, I wouldn't be here. This is a huge, and so much of it comes down. I mean, think about the infighting amongst all the folks, Sunnis and Shiites, and it's a religious issue for them. The religions are fighting each other, along with the historical battles that have gone on between them, between Iran and Iraq, and you've got all these conflicting cultures and beliefs that some people aren't pure enough and Islamic enough, and they don't believe enough, and they're willing to kill people that aren't religious enough that are their neighbors. And then you've got these lifelong hatreds. It's very similar to the Balkans. When I spent 3 years over in Bosnia, former Yugoslav Republic. There's just so much history, thousands of years of hating each other and killing, and one group getting the upper hand, that when the next one comes up, they're more than willing to pay back. So I don't have an answer to it because, I mean, it's so complicated. It's well above my brain power.
Is it easier to answer the military component?
Not really, because everybody's got to go in. It can't just be us. You've got to commit to occupying the entire Middle East theater, and I just don't think it's doable. It's just not doable. Not at current. I think we can defeat ISIS. That's doable, and that would help a lot. But we've got to be very clear as to what do we want to accomplish and what's our role and where we shouldn't be. And I don't think we've done a good job of that in the last 7 years for sure.
Thank you very much. Scott, we have a gift for you of appreciation. We'll be making a donation to the Rotary International Foundation in your name. And
you.
That is compliments of CTL Engineering. Thank you, everyone. Reminder, there is no meeting next week on January 18th in observance of Martin Luther King Day. We do invite you to go out and do a day of service, do something that day to honor the Martin Luther King heritage. On January 25th, our speaker will be E.J. Thompson from Habitat for Humanity. In the meantime, be a Rotarian all week long.